Over the last 10 years, I've read over 400 books that all claim to change your life. Truth is, 50% you could probably skip because they're marketing tools for the author and will eat 8 hours of your life. 48% had some decent ideas, but then there was the 2%. These 2% books had such a deep impact that never left even after the first read. Those 2% books are sitting right here, and I want to walk you through the 10 books I would definitely recommend you read that'll change your life. I'm gonna go over the big idea from each, what phase of your life I would recommend you read it in, who it's for, and how they changed my perspective on achievement, staying present, and how they prevented some expensive mistakes. Beautiful day here in Arizona. Let's go get some fresh air and kick it off with book number 1. Let's go. If you've ever felt like you can't stop checking your phone or scrolling, or you're trapped by bad habits or addictions, this next book will help you break all of the above. Dopamine Nation by Anna Lembke. She's a Stanford psychologist and professor who runs the addiction clinic. And this book I've recommended several times on this channel because it's filled with real stories from real people struggling with all kinds of things. Dopamine isn't a pleasure chemical in that you get it after you get the thing, but it's more important with motivation, anticipating rewards. So whatever you associate dopamine with is going to dictate your day-to-day life. When you're anticipating Christmas throughout all of December, you have a lot of dopamine building up to it, but after it happens, you know that there's kind of a crash. Checking your phone, scrolling feels really good, and then afterwards, if it's Sunday night and you got a full work week ahead of you, there's the Sunday scaries that kick in and we start to feel bad. Dopamine can work for you or against you. And the world today is set up with just tons of cheap dopamine, from scrolling, from food, from entertainment. One study I found fascinating in this book was about addictions and how they can shrink your temporal horizons. They asked a group to complete the following sentence. After waking, Bill began to think long about his future. Now they asked two groups. One were addicts and the other were quote unquote normal people. Now, how long do you think that future was that Bill started thinking about? A year, 2 years? Well, the addicts said it was 9 days, and the healthy brains, non-addicts, said it was 4.7 years. And if you've ever struggled with addiction, you understand how it makes you think so short-term towards that one thing. Huberman calls addiction the progressive narrowing of the things that bring you pleasure. I love that if we're hooked on video games, pornography, doom scrolling, drugs, alcohol, whatever our thing is, the deeper we get into it, the shrinking of the things that bring us pleasure until it's only that one thing. And the scary part that she talks about in this book is now you don't even do that thing to make you feel good because you're so used to it. You just need it to feel not bad. I shared my struggles with alcohol on the channel, and it was that. It was like the things that bring you pleasure start shrinking down into where you're the 9 days instead of 4.7 years. And man, if you want to do anything in this world, you gotta have a long time horizon. Think about that. Relationships takes a long time horizon instead of just chasing the little 3-month things here and there where you don't build anything, but they have tons of dopamine around. Building a business. It's really hard to lock yourself in a room in the early stages. You're working a job and then you got to come home and build your thing that's not making any money, but that takes a long time horizon to work at it. And ultimately, if you want to get your dopamine balance in check, she recommends dopamine fasting for 30 days of the thing you feel hooked on. And we did a book breakdown if you want more of these ideas. I'll link it in the description below. Definitely worth a read. It's why I recommend it. It's so easy to read. It's fun, and she did a great job with this. So what if you had over 600 pages of raw, behind-the-scenes insight from the dude who built the first trillion-dollar company, and likely the phone you're watching this video on? You'd read that, right? Steve Jobs by Walter Isaacson. The psychology of an obsessive perfectionist and when you refuse to settle for what's good enough. But what's the best idea? Well, it's hard to choose just one, but the biggest is Steve's reality distortion field. This is what he was famous for, being super unreasonable with deadlines and standards and what could be done. There was one crazy story I wrote down about the Mac boot time. It was in '84 and Steve wanted it to be 10 seconds faster. But the engineer was like, dude, this is impossible. There's no way we can make this computer light up 10 seconds faster. Steve's like, if someone's life was on the line and you had to make it 10 seconds faster, could you? The engineer's like, yeah, I guess I could. So Steve went to the whiteboard and did some math. He's like, We got 5 million people using the Mac. If each of them wastes just 10 seconds a day, that's over 5 million hours a year, or the equivalent of 7 human lifetimes every single year. And a few weeks later, that engineer came back to him, not with a computer that booted 10 seconds faster, not 15, but 28 seconds faster. How about the iPod? Something that had never been done. Steve wanted 1,000 songs in your pocket. Closest thing was this Toshiba drive that was developed in Japan. So Steve wrote someone a $10 million blank check and said, I don't care what it takes, you're making this. The team developed the entire hardware, software, and UI in under 8 months. What I got from this book as well is that Steve was obsessed with the little details that no one would see. When they would build a computer, Steve would open it up and look at how the chips were laid out. And if they weren't internally beautiful, he would say, we have to rearrange the whole thing. And to the engineering team, they're thinking practically, like no one's gonna see inside the computer. But he was obsessed with every detail. The thing Steve was best at was not design, was not even engineering. He didn't really know much of that. But what he was the best at was being a visionary and getting people to buy into his vision. And that's exactly what you have to do if you're gonna lead a team or have a mission or leave a mark on the world. Like, you have to be able to be a leader and get people to buy into your vision. That greatness isn't about what you add, it's about what you don't do, and it's about what you remove. We all spend too much time on our screens and our social muscles have atrophied. So if you've ever felt awkward in conversations, or maybe you're in a work environment and you're wondering, how do some people get ahead? That feels kind of fake, and you're wrestling with that tension of wanting to be liked and wanting not to people please, but just to make friends and have good social interactions. The classic Dale Carnegie, How to Win Friends and Influence People. Most people get in conversations and they're so worried about how do they look? Okay, how do I sound? Do they like me? But this book says, don't worry about any of that. Just go in seeking to understand the other person. One practical thing you can do from this book that I take away and has improved every conversation I've had with a stranger is trying to find their secret obsession. So everyone's got that one thing that if you get them going on, they are off. I know you have it as well. For me, it's like pop punk, Warped Tour, metal bands. So you get me going on that and, we're off. Everyone has that. And so when you're able to tap into that, they start coming alive, they walk away feeling lit up, and they associate all those feelings with you. That's what it means being interested in other people instead of us trying to be interesting. And let's face it, a lot of the charisma advice out there is about how you look and how you sound and how to sit in a chair to not look like a beta male. Some of you are screaming, you need that video. You look like a beta male in that little camping chair. It was the only one they had on sale at Walmart, guys. But when you go in interested in other people, that's where the conversation gets fun, and that's where they walk away vibing with you. And that takes the pressure off of you. Conversations aren't this, you walk in and it's a giant monologue and you have to impress people and sound smart and look cool. It's a dialogue. It's a dance. You give, they take, you take. Ultimately, if you can balance the scale and more giving than taking, that's where positive interactions are and will be, and that's how you can win people over to your way of thinking. Michael Easter, The Comfort Crisis. This is one I read this year and really changed how I think about being comfortable. And if you've ever felt like a shell of the person you used to be a couple years ago before all this comfort or before all this tech, this book gives science and reasons why. One of the best lessons from this book I took away is the concept of comfort creep. So there was a study referenced in here by Dan Gilbert, who you'll hear about in this video. He's just one of the books as well, where he was studying TSA agents when you board a plane and how they're trained to look for threats. But when the threats start going down, the stops don't go down, they maintain the same. Essentially saying that when there's no threats, they'll still view things as threats to have something to do. Our brains work the same way, except you're wired to solve problems. Those are the threats. Problems. Seek out problems and solve them. And it used to be back in the day, we had the problem of having 10 kids and like 3 of them would get the plague and die. And now our problems is that our girlfriend said the DoorDash order was getting dropped off. You go to get it and you have to make awkward small talk with the person. Oh, thanks, man. Oh God, that was so awkward. Why'd you have me go out there? So I love that concept of comfort creep, that the more comfortable we get, we still have the same baseline of our feeling and need for problems to feel good. And the more comfortable we get, it's not like we get happier. If anything, the trivial things start pissing us off a little more. I guess the biggest lesson from this book is that we should pursue being bored. You have something called your default mode network, and it lets your nervous system recharge when you don't have any stimulation. But the problem now is we have, hundreds of phone notifications a day, endless walls of content we're scrolling through. We're plugged in. Even when we're driving, we have to have music on and stuff. So for me, just doing little challenges like, okay, I have 5 minutes before my improv class starts. Do I need to cram more TikToks in? Or can I just let it ride and sit here for the 5 minutes without stimulation? Or, I have 10 more minutes before my fiance's ready and we're gonna leave. Do I need to check stocks or cram another podcast? Or can I just sit here and be in the moment petting my dog instead of multitasking? Little things like that you can incorporate throughout your day. It doesn't have to be these giant challenges where you're in an Alaskan wilderness. I think can have profound benefits on just letting your nervous system recharge and not being so overstimulated. In a world obsessed with change, everyone's looking for what will the future look like. But what if all the answers lie in not what will change, but in what never does? That's the premise behind Same as Ever, Morgan Housel. This is the dude who wrote The Psychology of Money, if you're familiar with that book. This book is all about human nature and why we keep repeating the same mistakes over and over again as a collective. Well, what are some of those trends? What are the big ideas? One of my favorites is on wild numbers. You ever heard something that there's a 1 in a million chance this will happen? You've heard people say that to you. Oh, 1 in a million chance that happens. Well, with 8 billion people on the planet, one in a million things happen 8,000 times a day. And a 1 in a billion event happens 8 times a day. That's almost 3,000 times a year. And over the course of your lifetime, you will have lived through 250,000 1 in a billion events. The point he makes is that it's so easy to see the world go into hell in a handbasket, especially now when you turn on the news, right? Doom and gloom. If it bleeds, it leads. You're scrolling through your TikTok, the viral videos, and we can get so wrapped up in it and have this mindset that everything is burning around us. But we might just be seeing the 1 in a billion things that are happening. And now that we're so connected with phones, everyone's got a little broadcaster right here. We're seeing more and more of it. So our perception of what's happening gets distorted. Current events absolutely matters. There's absolutely terrible things going on. But when you let that color your whole narrative of, oh, the world is terrible because of these 1 in a billion things happening, it's not the full picture, is the point the book is making. All right, if you've ever done something that you beat yourself up for over and over again in your mind and you can't stop thinking about, this book will haunt you in the best way possible. Crime and Punishment. I'm attempting this Russian name, Fyodor Dostoevsky. To my Russian friends, I tried. This book is all about the psychology of guilt and why you can't think yourself out of a guilty conscience. It was written in 1866 and it still holds up to this day. The main character is Raskolnikov, and he's this 21-year-old, good-looking, charismatic dude who is super egoic and thinks he's above people. So above people that he convinces himself that there are 2 types of men. The extraordinary man who is above moral law. So people who have paved the way in history, started wars for the perceived greater good, they were above moral law because they were able to impede their will on others. Then there's the ordinary man who is bound to moral law, has a conscience, and can't rise above it. So to put that to the test, he takes it to the extreme and commits a murder. But in his mind, it's justified because it was this evil pawnbroker who was ripping off the whole town, and in his mind, she deserved it. But although his mind agrees with the logic that he came up with, his body doesn't. And what follows is like 400 pages of self-sabotage. This guy gets physically sick, he can barely talk, he breaks out in sweats, and the whole book is him oscillating between wanting to do the right thing and turn himself in, and dropping hints, wanting to get caught, like this whole thing could be over if I just get caught, like get it over already, and also justifying the murder of why he did it. And so the biggest lesson from this is you can't rationalize your way out of a guilty conscience. Raskolnikov's crime and his punishment was the isolation he felt from everyone he loved around him that he pushed away. So I won't spoil how he gets out of it. I will say, if you read this book like I did recently, I believe there are 6 sections, and the first section takes a little to get going. Once it hits part 2, it really finds its footing, and if you're like me, you won't be able to put it down. All right, this next book explains why if you've ever gotten what you think you wanted and felt different than you thought you would, what's going on in your mind? Stumbling on Happiness, Dan Gilbert. Dan Gilbert is a Harvard psychologist and one of the most respected voices in modern psychology. We overestimate how good we'll feel when we get something, and we underestimate how bad we'll feel when something happens. This is because you have a baseline level of happiness, and when something good happens to you, you get a little spike, but then that eventually goes back to your baseline. When something bad happens, you get a little crash, but then we rise back up and persevere to our baseline. You'd think if you won the lottery, you'd be tap dancing every single day of your life, right? What they find is that lottery winners, yeah, there's a huge spike, but then they return back to their baseline. And then you also think that if you lost your arms or your legs or both in a car crash, tragically, that you'd be miserable and you could never go on. What they find is that paraplegics, quadriplegics raise back up to their baseline of happiness. So that teaches me 2 things. A, that most of the things we think we're chasing won't actually bring us happiness, and what will is the process and working towards them. But B, you're much more resilient than you give yourself credit for. And you can go through life knowing that if things don't work out, you'll be okay. It's not going to be as bad as you think it is in your mind. You ever felt like you've built your life based on what other people expect from you? Maybe you're not sure what you actually want anymore. Well, this book will either liberate you or piss you off, probably both. The Fountainhead by Ayn Rand. First time I read this, I was in college and I was working as a janitor, but it left such an impact on me because it follows the main character, Howard Rourke. He's an architect that is hell-bent on seeing his visions for buildings and really art come to life. He doesn't care if people like it. He doesn't care if people like him. And he's extremely unique and talented. So he even ghost designed some buildings with the stipulation that his name not be on it because it's not his vision 100%. If people pleasing is on one spectrum, Howard Rourke is on the complete opposite. There's another character in the book, Peter Keating, who's his rival, but also his friend, who bases his whole career off will they like it? How do I fit in? He is the people pleaser. And he ultimately gets the girl, he gets the success, but he winds up shallow and hollowed. There's kind of this first-hander versus second-hander approach Ayn Rand uses in the book, where people think they're original, but they're really following the crowd because they're so concerned with other people's opinions, and it dictates everything they do. One theme of the book is that the world punishes authenticity. So Howard Rourke finds himself broke, jobless. He even has to go work in a stone quarry because he refuses to compromise his artistic vision. And it's frustrating because you'll go through life and see a lot of Peter Keatings get ahead and seem like they're winning by fitting in and blending in and just like submitting to whatever people want. So it's an interesting question. Are you building something because it's what you want? It's your art that you're here to create. Are we collecting all this image and status and things to impress other people, or is it what we genuinely want because we think it's cool? Again, massive book if you're creative or you just feel like you're caught in people-pleasing mode. Whew, this book will blow your socks off. Next up is a book that plays on some of the others we've spoken about. This is from a meditation teacher, Tara Brach. She's also a psychologist. Radical Acceptance. The trance of unworthiness is this low-grade feeling of I'm not enough that you might be walking around on. And it causes you to people please in relationships because if they like me, the validation I get, then I can prove to myself that I'm enough. Or it might cause you to fall into things like workaholism, where you're working so hard to try and prove your way out of it that you're enough. But she argues that no amount of success or validation can show you that you're enough because that'll always keep you under that trance of unworthiness. And it's just this flywheel of where, okay, if I'm getting all my self-worth from people who like me, well, now if one person doesn't like me, that really messes with your head if you're conditioned for validation from others. And the only way to break free of that is to not need validation from other people. Even when things are going well, we start to tell ourselves we don't deserve it. Isn't that crazy? I can relate to that hardcore with business ups and downs. There were times where I doubted myself. I was on the up and yeah, it felt good, but there were times where I felt like, oh, if people really knew behind the scenes, they wouldn't feel this way about me. Or I have a great relationship, but do I deserve it? Oh, I must try to impress them and earn that. That's all the trance of unworthiness. And ultimately it's shame. That's where it's coming from. That if you really knew who I was on the inside, you'd reject me too. When you can accept your imperfections, that's when your breakthroughs happen. Because we connect to imperfect people. We don't connect to perfect people. Hard to remember, so we always need reminders, and I keep coming back to this book and I'm always reminded of that lesson. But when it sinks in, everything changes. That's why I'm recommending Radical Acceptance for you. All right, this next book, if you've ever felt like you have different versions of yourself that show up in different situations, you may find yourself going to create something and man, this inner critic kicks on and everything you write, you're doubting. Or this perfectionist kicks on and it won't let you publish anything that's not absolutely perfect. You might find yourself in conversations and instead of saying your opinion, you hold yourself back because the people pleaser part kicks on. This book, No Bad Parts, is all about that. How you're not just one thing or one person consistent in every moment, but there's actual multiple parts of you that kick on or off in situations. It's written by Richard Schwartz, who came up with IFS, Internal Family Systems, which is a method of therapy that he trains therapists on and is pretty widely known and used to this day. What's fascinating about this model is that these parts we think are bad, we shove down and we fight against. There's this resistance internally. Like, oh, I hate that part of myself, or I hate when I do that. But no part is bad. It always has a positive intent. And the positive intent is usually protection. That something happened as a kid or you had an experience, maybe you saw something with childhood. That's why a lot of therapy goes back to your childhood, or in a relationship or what have you. And it caused that part to kick on and protect you from the pain experiencing it ever again in the future. I relate to this to the work I do. I mean, it's front facing, it's presenting, it's creative. I have a ruthless inner critic. And it was so bad, it almost prevented me from doing any videos. Every video, I feel it kick on. And I worked with a coach who was obsessed with this and put me onto this work. And a lot of that work through IFS was getting those parts to chill out enough so that your true self can come out. And I'll notice this back in the day when I would film videos and try to get it right and I have so much to say in here and I want to share it, it would always come out stiff and forced. But then when I was able to just, okay, breathe, chill out more, then what I really wanted to say would come out. And that's when I'd look back on those videos and be like, okay, there's Clark. Not when you're trying to get it perfect and not when you're trying to read a script and, get in your head, but when you're finally chilled out and at ease, oh, your personality can come out. You're more expressive and dynamic. And that works the same way with you, that when these parts that are protecting you, you can chill them out a little more. Now your real self emerges and you're not suppressed. Maybe you're in a relationship where that version of you comes out and you two say the craziest things to each other behind the scenes. Well, you can have that with other interactions if you let yourself chill out more and you realize that there's no bad parts. None of them are bad. They all have a positive intent. Thanks so much for watching the video. This one took some time to put together, so appreciate the like. Comment down below what your 2% book is that changed your life. And I'll link up right here our book breakdown series. So if you like a few of these books, there's definitely some breakdowns in there that'll give you the 10 big ideas from one of the books. See you in the next one. Stop settling, start living. Peace.